I should have known. Maybe I did, in some quiet, unwilling part of my mind. Maybe the truth had been whispering to me all along, waiting for the moment I was ready to listen. But it wasn't until tonight that everything finally fell into place. Tonight, I saw my wife for who she really was. Emily and I had been married for 8 years. We weren't rich, but we were happy. At least, I thought we were. Our life was simple: dinners at home, road trips when we could afford them, and long walks where we'd talk about nothing and everything. I loved her in a way that made me certain we would grow old together. Then came Greg, multimillionaire, flashy businessman, the kind of man who had never worried about price tags or mortgages. I had met him once at a charity gala Emily insisted we attend. He had that effortless arrogance of men who had never been told no. He laughed too loudly, drank too much, and looked at my wife like she was already his. I should have seen it then. But I didn't, not until tonight, when I came home earlier than expected and found Emily packing her bags. She didn't cry. She didn't make excuses. "I need more in life," she said simply, as if she were telling me she was stepping out for groceries. I stared at her, my chest hollowing out with each breath. "More," I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed, rubbing her temples as if I was the one being difficult. "James, I've tried, but I can't live like this forever. Greg can give me things you never could." The words hit me harder than I expected, not because of what she said, but because of how easily she said it. Like love had never been enough. Like I had never been enough. A taxi pulled up outside, its headlights slicing through the darkness. She grabbed her last bag and walked past me without looking back. I watched her go, my pulse pounding in my ears. That was the night I lost my wife. But it was also the night I realized something else. She hadn't just traded me for wealth. She had traded everything. And I had a feeling she would come to regret it. The days after Emily left felt unreal, like I had stepped into a life that wasn't mine. At first, I told myself I was fine. I went to work, answered emails, even forced myself to eat, though everything tasted like paper. Our apartment, my apartment now, was eerily quiet. The scent of her perfume still clung to the pillows. Her favorite coffee mug sat untouched in the sink. I tried to erase her. I packed up the things she left behind, stuffed them into a box, and shoved it into the back of the closet. But no matter how hard I tried, she was still there, in the echoes of our old life, in the way my hand reached for her side of the bed before I remembered she wasn't there. Meanwhile, Emily was thriving. At least, that's what social media told me. Pictures of her draped in designer dresses, sipping champagne in places I couldn't afford flashed across my screen. Greg's arm was always around her, his grin smug, his wealth on display. They traveled: Milan, Paris, the Maldives. The same woman who once cried over a broken washing machine was now taking private jets like it was nothing. She never looked back. Not once. And that's when the anger started. I had spent 8 years believing we were partners, that love could withstand struggle. But Emily hadn't wanted love, she had wanted luxury. Comfort. And now she had it. For the first time, I wondered if she had ever truly loved me at all. The moment Emily walked out that door, she had left me behind. But what she didn't know was that time has a way of turning the tables. She thought she had one. She thought I would always be the man she left behind. But life had other plans. Months passed, and I did what I could to move on. I stopped checking her social media. I stopped wondering where she was, what she was doing, or if she ever thought about me. Instead, I focused on myself. I hit the gym, I reconnected with old friends, and for the first time in years, I started thinking about what I wanted. And then, something unexpected happened. A business deal I had been working on for years finally took off. A client I had landed before the divorce turned into something bigger than I had ever imagined. Suddenly, I wasn't just getting by, I was thriving. My work tripled, and so did my income. It was ironic, really. The same man Emily had left because he couldn't provide the life she wanted was now making more money than I ever had. But it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything to her. It was about proving something to myself, that I was never the failure she had made me out to be. And then, one evening, as I sat at a rooftop bar with a view of the city skyline, my phone buzzed with a name I never thought I'd see again. Emily. For a long moment, I just stared at it, watching her name flash on my screen. Curiosity got the best of me. I answered. "James." Her voice was softer than I remembered, almost hesitant. "Can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk curling at the edges of my lips. Now, this was interesting. I shouldn't have answered. I should have let it ring, let her words slip into the void where she had thrown me months ago. But I was only human, and curiosity is a dangerous thing. Emily, I said, my voice even. This is unexpected. A pause. A breath. Then, softer. How have you been? I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. How had I been? She hadn't asked that when she packed her bags. She hadn't cared when she left me for Greg's penthouse and private jets. I've been great, I said, letting the words settle. And you? Silence. And then, a quiet confession. I made a mistake. Now that made me pause. For months, Emily had paraded her new life in front of the world. Expensive dinners. Dream vacations. Smiling for the cameras, wrapped in Greg's wealth. She had chosen him, chosen that life. So why did she sound broken? What do you want, Emily? I asked, cutting through the act. A deep, shaky breath. Can we meet? Please. There was a time when I would have dropped everything for her. When I would have run to her side without hesitation. But that man no longer existed. Still, I wanted to see her. Not out of love. Not out of longing. But because I needed to know. I needed to see, with my own eyes, what had become of the woman who had traded love for wealth. And so I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. The kind of place we used to go to when life was simple, when love was enough. Emily was already there when I arrived, sitting in the farthest booth, nursing a cup of coffee she had barely touched. She looked different. The glow she once had, the effortless confidence, was gone. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look smaller, almost fragile. This wasn't the Emily I had known. This was a woman who had lost. I slid into the seat across from her, leaning back, waiting. She looked up at me, her eyes scanning my face like she was searching for something. You look good, she said, offering a weak smile. I did. Success had changed me. The man she had left behind was gone, replaced by someone sharper, more refined. Someone who had learned how to live without her. I didn't return the compliment. Instead, I said, Why am I here, Emily? She swallowed, her fingers tightening around her cup. Greg cheated on me, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. With his secretary. He threw me out. Oh, so that was it. The dream life she had chosen had collapsed. The man she had left me for had done to her what she had done to me. Karma had a funny way of making things right. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her, watched the way her shoulders curled inward, the way she tried to make herself small. Emily, who had once stood so tall, now looked like a shadow of the woman she used to be. And yet, despite everything, despite the betrayal, the pain, the nights I had spent alone wondering why I wasn't enough, there was no satisfaction in seeing her like this. Just a quiet kind of closure. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. Her lips trembled. I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but, James, I made a mistake. I see that now. I should have never left. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting her words hang in the air. She was waiting for me to say something, to reach across the table, to offer her a second chance. But I wasn't that man anymore. And she wasn't the woman I had once loved. Emily's eyes searched mine, waiting, hoping. I knew what she wanted. A lifeline. A chance to undo the past. To pretend that the choices she made could somehow be rewritten. But life doesn't work like that. I leaned back, studying her. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe the weight of her choices had finally come crashing down on her. Why are you here, Emily? I asked again, this time softer. Her fingers trembled around her coffee cup. I don't know, she admitted. When everything fell apart, I realized the only person who ever truly loved me was you. I let out a quiet breath, shaking my head. You realized that when Greg threw you out? She flinched, as if my words had physically struck her. It was a simple truth. If Greg had stayed faithful, if her life had continued in luxury, she wouldn't be sitting here. She wouldn't have looked back. I could see it in her face. She knew it too. James, she whispered, her voice breaking. I miss you. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch, let her sit in the weight of what she had done. And then, finally, I spoke. You don't miss me, Emily. My voice was steady. You miss the version of me who would have taken you back without question. The man who would have begged for you to stay. Her lower lip trembled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I loved you, I said, my voice firm but calm. I would have done anything for you. But you threw it away. And now you want it back, because you have nothing left. A single tear slipped down her cheek, but I felt nothing. The pain I had once carried for her had disappeared, replaced by something else, something freeing. I stood up, tossing some cash onto the table for my coffee. You made your choice, Emily, I said quietly. And so did I. She looked up at me, desperation flickering in her gaze. James, please. But I was already walking away. And this time, I was the one who didn't look back. The cold evening air hit me as I stepped out of the cafe, but I barely felt it. My body moved on instinct, my feet carrying me down the quiet street, away from the past that had been waiting for me inside. I had imagined this moment so many times, Emily coming back, asking for forgiveness, trying to reclaim what she had thrown away. In some versions, I had welcomed her back with open arms. In others, I had unleashed my anger, listing every way she had betrayed me. But now that it had finally happened, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing. I turned a corner and stopped walking, taking a slow breath. My hands clenched at my sides, the conversation replaying in my mind. Emily, sitting in that booth, looking fragile in a way I had never seen her before. Her voice trembling as she admitted she had made a mistake. She had always been beautiful, but tonight, she had looked hollow. I could still hear the plea in her voice. I miss you. But she didn't miss me. She missed the stability I had provided. She missed the man who had once put her above everything, who had made her the center of his world. She missed the comfort of knowing someone loved her unconditionally. But I wasn't that man anymore. I took my phone out of my pocket, my fingers hovering over her name in my call history. A part of me wanted to block her number, to erase her from my life completely. But something stopped me. Not yet. Not because I wanted to keep her around, but because I needed to see this through. I wanted to know how far she would go. Would she fight for me now the way I had once fought for her? Or had she only come to me because she had no one else? I wasn't sure yet. But I knew one thing for certain. No matter what she did next, my answer would remain the same. Emily had lost me the night she walked out that door. She just didn't know it yet. For the next few days, Emily didn't call. She didn't text. And yet, I could feel her lingering in the corners of my life, like a ghost that hadn't quite figured out it was dead. I kept waiting for the moment she would reach out, for the inevitable message saying she regretted everything, that she wanted to see me again. But it didn't come, and not right away. Instead, she found another way. It happened one evening, just as I was leaving my office. The sun had already set, casting the city in a deep orange glow. I had just stepped outside when I spotted her, standing by my car. Emily. She looked different in the dim light, smaller, almost hesitant. She wasn't wearing designer clothes anymore. No jewelry, no expensive purse slung over her shoulder. Just a simple coat and a scarf wrapped around her neck, as if she were trying to blend in with the world she had once left behind. She saw me and straightened, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Hey, she said softly. I stopped a few feet away, crossing my arms. How did you know where I work? She shifted, looking almost guilty. I asked around. I raised an eyebrow. And you thought showing up like this was a good idea? I didn't know if you'd answer if I called, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I needed to see you. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Emily, we already said everything we needed to say. She bit her lip, her gaze dropping to the pavement. I know, she murmured. I don't know where else to go. And there it was. The truth beneath everything. Greg had thrown her out, and now she had nowhere else to turn. The man she had left me for, the man she had traded our marriage for, had done to her exactly what she had done to me. And she had come back, hoping I would be the safety net she had once abandoned. I let the silence stretch between us, watching as she fidgeted, waiting for me to say something. Then, finally, I spoke. Where's Greg now? Her expression twisted, pain flickering in her eyes. Gone. He moved on like I never even mattered. She let out a bitter laugh. Turns out, I was just a phase to him. A toy he got bored of. I didn't say anything. Because, deep down, she had just admitted what I had suspected all along. She had never truly loved him. Not the way she once claimed to love me. Emily had traded love for wealth, thinking it would make her happy. Now she had nothing. She lifted her eyes to mine, swallowing hard. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, James. And I know I can't take back what I did. She hesitated, her voice trembling. But I miss you. I miss us. I watched her for a long moment, searching for any trace of the woman I had once loved. She wasn't there. What stood before me was someone else entirely, a woman who had lost everything and was now desperately trying to grasp at what she had thrown away. But she was too late. I exhaled slowly, my breath visible in the cold night air. Emily, you don't miss me. Her brows furrowed in confusion. What? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You miss what I gave you. You miss the comfort, the stability, the love. But you don't miss me. I let the words sink in, watching as the realization flickered across her face. Because if you did, you would have never left. She blinked rapidly, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. James, please. I shook my head. I'm not that man anymore. Her lip trembled. So that's it, she whispered. After everything, you're just going to walk away? I smiled faintly. No, Emily. You walked away. And with that, I turned and left her standing in the cold. I didn't look back. As I walked away from Emily, I felt the weight of her stare pressing into my back. But I didn't stop. I had nothing left to say. For months, I had imagined what it would feel like to face her again. To have the chance to say the things that had burned inside me since the night she left. But now that the moment had come and gone, I felt no triumph. No satisfaction. Only finality. By the time I got home, I half expected her to call or send a message, some desperate attempt to convince me to change my mind. But my phone remained silent. Good. She had finally understood. I wasn't her backup plan. I wasn't the man she could discard and expect to find waiting when her life fell apart. I poured myself a drink, sinking into the couch as the city lights flickered outside my window. The apartment felt different now, lighter, somehow. Like the last remaining shadow of Emily had finally disappeared. I took a slow sip, staring out at the skyline. This was my life now. And for the first time in a long time, I was glad she wasn't in it. But Emily wasn't done. Not yet. 2 days later, I was at a business event, a networking dinner hosted at one of the city's high-end hotels. It was the kind of place where expensive suits and empty compliments filled the room, but I had learned how to navigate these circles. Success had changed my life, and with it came a new world of opportunities. I was in the middle of a conversation when I felt it. A presence. I turned slightly, and there she was. Emily. She was standing near the entrance, her gaze fixed on me, her posture hesitant. She looked different from the last time I had seen her outside my office, more put together, as if she had tried to reclaim some of her old confidence. But I could see the truth in her eyes. She was nervous. She had no place here anymore. I excused myself from the conversation and made my way toward her, my expression unreadable. Emily, what are you doing here? She hesitated, fingers gripping the small clutch in her hands. I needed to see you. I sighed, already exhausted by whatever game she was trying to play. Emily, we already talked. There's nothing left to say. She swallowed hard, her voice quieter. I wanted to tell you that I'm leaving town. That caught me off guard. Leaving? She nodded. There's nothing left for me here. Greg's gone. My so-called friends disappeared the moment I lost the lifestyle they admired. And you've moved on. She let out a shaky breath. So, I figured it was time for me to do the same. For a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once loved. Not the one who had betrayed me, but the one I had built a life with before greed and selfishness had poisoned her heart. But the past was the past, and I wasn't that man anymore. Where will you go? I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. She gave a weak smile. I don't know yet. Maybe somewhere quiet. Start over. She hesitated before adding, I just wanted to say goodbye. There was a time when those words would have broken me, when the thought of never seeing her again would have felt unbearable. But now? Now, it felt like the final piece falling into place. I nodded. Goodbye, Emily. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but she held herself together. She gave me one last look, one filled with something that almost resembled love, or maybe just regret, before turning and walking away. And this time, I knew she wouldn't be coming back. Emily was gone. For the first time since she walked out of our home months ago, I knew with absolute certainty that she wouldn't come back. There would be no more late-night phone calls, no more desperate attempts to rekindle what she had thrown away. And I felt nothing but relief. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking about her less and less. She had once been the center of my world, the woman I had planned to spend my life with. But now? Now, she was just a chapter in a story I had already finished reading. I threw myself into my work, into the new life I had built. My business was thriving, my social circle had expanded, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself. One evening, I found myself at another high-end event, another gathering of people who had spent their lives chasing success. I was standing near the bar, sipping my drink, when a familiar voice pulled me from my thoughts. James. I turned, half expecting to see Emily again, but it wasn't her. It was Claire, an old friend. Someone who had once been part of the same social circles Emily and I had belonged to. We had lost touch after the divorce, but now here she was, smiling at me like no time had passed. I was wondering if I'd see you here, she said, stepping closer. I smirked. And why's that? She shrugged. You've been making a name for yourself. It's hard not to hear about James Whitmore these days. I chuckled, shaking my head. Guess I've been busy. She tilted her head, studying me. You seem different. I am, I admitted. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. Good. I always thought you deserved better. I raised an eyebrow. Better than what? She hesitated, as if debating whether to say it. Then, finally, she spoke. Better than her. I didn't have to ask who she meant. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting her words settle. Yeah, I said finally. I think so too. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I found myself smiling back. Because Emily was gone, and I was finally free. Weeks passed, then months. Emily became nothing more than a distant memory, a ghost that no longer haunted me. The pain of her betrayal had faded, replaced by something stronger, peace. Life moved forward. I expanded my business, traveled more, and surrounded myself with people who genuinely valued me. Claire and I kept in touch, our friendship rekindling in a way that felt easy, natural. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't waiting for closure or revenge. I had everything I needed. And then, one afternoon, fate decided to remind me just how far I had come. I was grabbing coffee from a small cafe downtown when I saw her. Emily. She was sitting at a corner table, alone, staring into her cup as if it held the answers to all the mistakes she had made. She looked different, tired, worn down. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by something simpler. There was no expensive jewelry, no polished elegance. Just her. A woman who had once had everything and lost it all. She hadn't seen me yet, and for a brief moment, I debated walking away. But then, as if sensing my presence, she lifted her head. Her eyes widened in surprise, and then, something else. Regret. I met her gaze, and for the first time since she had left, I saw the truth written all over her face. She had lost. She had gambled away real love for a fantasy, and now, she had nothing. The Emily who had once walked out of my life so confidently was now sitting in a cafe, looking like a woman who had been left behind by the world. She opened her mouth slightly, as if about to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. I simply gave her a polite nod, nothing more, nothing less, before turning and walking away. I didn't need to hear her apology. I didn't need to know how badly she wished she could undo the past, because I had already won, and I had never felt lighter. I stepped out of the cafe, the cool breeze brushing against my skin as I took a deep breath. That was it. The last thread tying me to Emily had finally snapped. There was no anger, no bitterness, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had survived. No, more than that. I had thrived. She had chosen wealth over love, believing that money would always be enough. But now she was sitting alone, nursing a cheap cup of coffee, while I was standing outside, free in a way I had never been before. Poetic justice. I walked down the street, my hands in my pockets, a small smirk tugging at the corner of my lips. A familiar voice called out my name. James. I turned to see Claire approaching, her warm smile like a ray of light cutting through the past. She had been the unexpected part of my journey, the proof that life had better things waiting for me once I stopped looking behind. She fell into step beside me, glancing over her shoulder at the cafe. Was that her? I didn't need to answer. She already knew. Claire smirked. Must feel good. I thought about that for a second, about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. No, I said, shaking my head. It just feels, right? Because the best revenge isn't anger. It isn't making someone regret their choices. The best revenge is moving on. And I had. Completely. I glanced at Claire, and as we walked together, I realized something. Emily was my past. But my future? That was just beginning. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.